Siwampak.
I got that down.
Siwampak. Toppy.
Stephanie Fielden is speaking Mohegan to anyone who will listen.
Language is made to be spoken. It's not alive until it is spoken.
Fielden is trying to breathe life into a Native American language that hasn't been widely spoken in more than 100 years. What little Fielden has to go on comes from a very distant relative who began documenting the language in the 1800s.
Fidelia Fielding, who was the last speaker, she left behind diaries that she wrote in Mohegan. So that's like the only bit of the language that was actually written down.
Fielden, a linguist and a member of the Mohegan tribe in Connecticut, has been using Fidelia's 4 diaries to build a dictionary of Mohegan words and phrases. She started with a simple list of Mohegan words, then she found the same words in 2 other Native American dialects, Delaware and Wampanoag. Both of those languages are better documented than Mohegan, and many of those words have English translations. She wrote the Mohegan word next to its Delaware, Wampanoag, and English counterparts, studying how the word changed between languages. Slowly, her list of Mohegan words began to grow.
We had an edition of the Mohegan Dictionary in 2006. I think there were 813 words in it. Now, the 2008 edition, I think there were 950 words, and I think now there are about 1,200 and some words.
Like the native tongues of other Algonquian tribes on the East Coast, the Mohegan language began to fade in the 1800s, when men, women, and children started leaving reservations for work and school.
The people you're working for, you have to communicate with them, and they're not going to speak native language.
Strong says that in recent decades, many of the tribes have focused on celebrating their culture. That includes a renewed interest in their language.
In the 1960s, when there was a great deal more emphasis on identity, the Red Power movement following the Black Power movement began to turn young people more and more to concerns about their culture and their language and so forth.
But trying to learn Mohegan words in grammar is a tough process. Among other differences, words that are adjectives in English are verbs in Mohegan.
Explaining all this to people, you know, if they don't get it, right away, they feel lost and like they're drowning, and so they say, "I quit," and they leave.
Fielden has seen interest in her classes fluctuate.
At some point, we had almost 30 students going at the same time. So that was a real thrill to me. I mean, it was like, rejuvenation, yes, this is going to work. And then it just sort of,
She's incorporating a game to make the language more accessible.
It's called total physical response. You put a sign with an English word, and then using that same sign, you use the Mohegan. And so your head is saying, this means what? Okay, this means what. And so when I say Jaquan, I know my head and my hand tell me it means what.
And she's welcomed interest from other tribes. The Shinnecock people on Long Island have a language very similar to Mohegan. Elizabeth, Tina, and Tahanj Terrence are 3 generations of Shinnecocks who have taken Fielden's language class online. Learning the language helps the women connect to their tribe's past.
To me, it is an organization of the words that we used. I'll say that are more or less scattered. We use them in conversation, or as I say, in place names. But we did not look at it as language.
It's also boosting the younger generation's interest in their own culture.
Coming back to the res after going to college, it really helped me focus on my identity as a Shinnecock person and the language that I need to learn. It's part of my responsibility, I feel, in this community to be a part of it and to pass it down through the generations.
Fielden is working to help make sure there is a language to pass down, but she knows just how slow the process of reviving a language can be. So like Fidelia Fielden, she's archiving everything she's done, just in case this revival fails.
Tell me the word again for I have.
Nawachanam.
Nawachanam.
If nothing happens, and I die and there's no one here that wants to take over, there will be in the future. Might be 2 or 3 generations from now, but some someone is going to come and go into the archives and say, look at this. And they won't have to start at the same place I did.
What one? What? Perfect.
Oh, we're so good today.
Yes, you are. You are. You're wonderful.
Listen to New York City. There are 800 languages spoken in the 5 boroughs. Some are very familiar. But how about Kabardian? Or Mamuju? Or this language? That's So, a Taiwanese language also spoken in New York. It, along with 90% of the world's languages, are in danger of extinction by the end of this century. Daniel Kaufman is trying to prevent that.
We're losing not only an enormous part of human culture when these last speakers die, but also, as I said, a real window into the mind.
As the director of the Endangered Language Alliance and a linguist at the CUNY Graduate Center, Kaufman locates, records, and documents vanishing languages.
When the last speaker dies, it's not as if the whole tribe or a whole race disappears. The people are still there, but they lose this link to their history.
Jesus Santana speaks Almuzgo, an indigenous language of southern Mexico. Santana is one of 10,000 speakers of a language that he fears will one day disappear.
My wife doesn't speak Almuzgo, and my daughter doesn't speak Almuzgo either. So if I don't teach my daughter to speak the language, it'll be lost.
Santana comes to the Alliance every Sunday. He and Kaufman, along with volunteers, spend hours creating a permanent record of Almuzgo. Despite the work of the Alliance, globalization is quickening the pace at which these endangered languages are dying off.
Many people don't really make the choice. It's sort of made for them by governments, by schools. They're sort of pushed into speaking a major world language.
That's what James Lovell says is happening to his native language of Garifuna, spoken in Belize and along the Caribbean coast.
I'm appealing to the Garifuna parents to teach the language, the Garifuna language, to the children.
We do.
Right now, he says, the language isn't being passed down among generations.
Their parents thought that it was better or it was more beneficial to learn Spanish or English. They didn't see the importance of speaking Garifuna.
Lovell is trying to preserve the music, history, and culture of Garifuna by teaching kids. Linguists estimate that one language around the world goes extinct every 2 weeks, but native speakers like Lovell don't care about the odds.
I don't think Garifuna is ever going to die. You see, because those kids are the future, and there are a lot of kids out here who they just need to be exposed to it. And I think that's what's pushing me.
New York City schools offer classes in 16 different languages, but keeping hundreds of other languages alive depends on people like James Lovell. For 219 West, I'm Jonathan Balthaser.